Well, welcome everybody to the second episode of the Creaky Blinder Show. Tonight, we're diving into one of the most ambitious attempts to settle the age-old debate about the shape of our lovely planet, the final experiment. Now, this project took a group of globe earthers and flat earthers to Union Glacier Camp in Antarctica, to the land of the midnight sun, in search of definitive proof. Not that it was needed, but that's what we did. But did it succeed? Did it change any minds? Now, tonight, I'm joined by a man who was on the front lines of this extraordinary journey. You all know him and his sidekick, Rusty. It's Mr. Dave McKeegan. Good evening,
Hello,
Dave.
everybody.
How are you doing, pal?
Hello,
Thanks for
everybody.
being here. Wonderful. I'm wonderful. And isn't it nice that these things can go perfectly first take and nobody will ever know that we've just wasted quarter of an hour balls in around with things we probably should have set up ahead of time, but there we are. It is what it is. So anyway, I was saying about, you said it was very surreal, and that's how I imagined it to be as well. And I think the last stupid thing I said was that it must have seemed almost as if you were on a different planet because it was all so kind of alien to you, not something you'd experienced or seen.
There were some striking similarities between Antarctica and what I imagine being on the moon is like, to the extent that I actually took I did some, shot some material while I was there that I intend on using in moon landing debunking videos, just because of the similarities. But I think the biggest head screw of the lot was the fact that the sun never set. You were 3 days of endless daylight just completely wrecks your body clock.
So what was the mechanism you used to sleep? Because I know that my bedroom has got to be as black as if I'm blind for me to be able to sleep. So I can't imagine it would have been easy to sleep if it was 3 o'clock in the morning and it was as bright as a summer's day in the UK.
Yeah, the mechanism I used was didn't sleep, basically. I 3 days in Antarctica and I slept for the grand total of 6 hours.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we arrived, I think it was about 3 in the afternoon local time that we landed. Then it was a case of get to the main camp, go through the introduction around camp, show you around the facilities, how everything works. Then they gave us some food, and then they said you've basically got a few hours to kill while we wait for. They had to finish. The staff at the airport, at the plane, was still unloading everything. They didn't want to take us up to halfway point until we got our cases and we could get all the clothing, because all our clothing was in the suitcases that were still back at the runway. Yeah. So we had to wait for those to arrive and then get sorted out and taken to the respective tents. So we didn't get up to halfway point until about 8:30, 9 p.m. in the evening. Then obviously it's a case of get everything set up. Again, because it's endless daylight and you've just had this crazy time, your body doesn't fully appreciate it's midnight. Like, Will went live with the midnight stream and he's going, oh, it's nearly 12 o'clock. And my head's just telling me he's talking like 12 o'clock lunchtime, not 12 o'clock midnight. And then straight after that, I was up. Toon went live for a few hours, so I was on with him. But the whole time, my tracking camera wasn't aligned perfectly right. So every sort of, I just had to keep going and checking it basically and recentering the sun every time. If I'd left it for more than an hour and a half, probably about 2 hours, I think, the sun would have drifted out of view. So I was like, I dare not risk falling asleep because my body clock's so shot. If I fall asleep, I could sleep for hours, I don't know. And then I could wake up and find the sun's not actually in view anymore in the camera, and that whole thing's ruined. So I just dare not take the risk. So I thought, I'm just staying up for the 24 hours at halfway point. I'll sleep when I get back to the camp. But then I don't know why. I got back to the camp and this was gone midnight again. This is early hours of the morning. And it was like the adrenaline was just pumping. And I thought, I don't want to go to sleep. I want to go and get me. I want to get my laptop. I want to back everything up off the cameras. I couldn't settle to go to sleep until I knew
Yeah.
that till I knew that time lapse was backed up off the 360 onto my computer. So
Yeah.
I think me, Will, Toon, all sat in the Fran, they call it, the food tent. We were in there until about, I think it was about 5 in the morning before I eventually went to the tent to get some sleep.
Yeah. So did you feel a certain amount of pressure by being the one of us who was going there? Because, well, not the only one I know, because MC2 and Critical Think, you know, but what I mean is you were sort of there to represent the debunking community in a sense, and you were sort of confronted and face to face with actual flat earthers out in the wild. Was there any sort of nervousness or sort of trepidation about coming face to face with people you've made videos about?
No, not particularly, because well, of the four that were on the flat Earth side, there was only Jeran and Austin that I'd had any previous sort of dealings with.
Yeah.
And because we'd had the 3 days in Chile beforehand, 2 or 3 days together in Chile before we flew to Antarctica. By the time we got to Antarctica, we were sort of on fairly calm terms with each other
Yeah.
anyway. Um, we'd been sort of fairly diplomatic. I think most of the tension had actually come between Jeran and Austin against Toon rather than myself. Yeah, even before Antarctica, we'd all had sort of fairly diplomatic conversations with each other. Jeran and I were actually getting on really well.
Yeah.
So yeah, by the time it kind of got to Antarctica, the pressure wasn't so much uh, how it'd be with the flat earthers. It was more making sure all the equipment was running
Yeah.
as it should, and the pressure of making sure that I got all the footage that I was aiming for. Kind
Yeah.
of, we had the safety net of knowing there was enough bleeding cameras there anyway. But I
Yeah.
think the main one for me, the pressure was that solar tracker, um,
Yeah.
because I was. Even though other people had solar filters and P1000s for getting pictures of the sun, it was that one that I had was the one that was tracking it constantly for 24 hours,
Right.
consistent settings all the way around to make sure that the size of the sun didn't change and stuff. So yeah, that was the pressure one for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I said, that was the one that made me think I'm just going to forego sleep for this one.
Yeah, yeah. So apart from like the scientific goals of the trip, because we all kind of know what the final experiment's purpose was and that kind of thing, what sort of challenges did you face? You know, we touched briefly just now on, you know, how you slept and everything, but in its simplest terms, how the hell did you handle the cold? It must have been absolutely beyond cold there.
You know, that's the funny thing is that was my that was one of my worries beforehand was the
Yeah,
cold temperature. Like my hands have fairly bad circulation anyway, so kind of my hands feel the cold.
yeah.
Even here in the UK now, I'm sort of my hands are the first
I'm
to
the same
feel the
right
effects.
now. My hands are pretty cold.
Mm.
You know, when I'm
So
in.
I was mindful of like before going, like before I even left home, that was my worry of like how am I going to cope in such a cold
Yeah,
environment. The ALE recommended sort of certain numbers of gloves and certain types of gloves. I took them and more. I
yeah.
even crafted homemade heated gloves that I could
Oh,
use,
very cool.
just because I thought I don't want to risk sort of getting
Yeah,
frostbite and losing fingers or anything.
yeah. Because I know I saw in some of the footage, some of the guys were wearing just, you know, like a hoodie or a fleece. So that, you know,
Well,
I everybody had the gloves on and the eye protection, but
that was the
their
weird
dress
thing.
implied it was mild,
That was the
relatively
thing. Yeah,
speaking.
so they told us beforehand, like staff came around to the hotel. to check all the gear. We had to lay everything out on our bed so that they could check we had all the relevant gear, all these different layers that we needed. And then they gave us these huge polar exploration layers, and they said, you take this layer on the plane with you. When you're about half an hour from landing, they're going to drop the temperature in the cabin. You put all the polar gear on so that you're already sort of acclimatized and you're good to go when you then get out on the runway. So I'm expecting like freezing temperatures. It was windy and you could feel the cold a bit, but it was nowhere near as bad as I thought. And by the time we got to the camp, it was sheltered from the wind. We were all quickly losing the polar layers because you kind of don't appreciate that the cold that you usually feel comes from either it being cloudy, so the sun's not the sun's heat isn't getting to you, and or the wind, and the wind's actually sort of shifting your body heat away from you and making you feel cold. Take away the wind and you're sitting in the sun, even though the air temperature I think was way below zero, or must have been way below zero, but it didn't actually feel that bad because the sun was heating you up quicker than your body's ditching the heat.
Yeah, because I've got nothing to compare it to apart from the first time I went to New Jersey, and it was in January, and they were having a particularly cold spell. I think it was about -5, -6 in our sort of language. And it when you went outside, if you didn't have gloves on, it was minutes before your fingers were painful and tingling. So that's the only thing I've got to compare it to. So the temperatures down there, I was expecting them to be almost painfully cold then.
It did get cold. Once we got up to halfway point, there was a bit more of only a light breeze. But once you've got that kind of slight air movement, it felt a lot colder. And then once you got into the early hours of the morning and the sun's dropped lower in the sky, much like here, much like everywhere else, you know, the temperature's at its highest when the sun's directly above you. And even just as the sun's dropping in elevation towards sunset, you feel the temperature drop because you're not getting as much heat from the sun. So it did go colder through the early hours. So I think you'll see in most of the footage, when the sun's towards the mountain over that direction is where I've got like thicker gloves on. That was when I was on stream with MC Toon, and I kept going back inside to get new gloves and change gloves because I could feel it in my fingers. Whereas when you get to the footage when the sun's sort of over north and higher up, I'm just walking around in just a jacket and kind of thin gloves.
Yeah, it's bonkers it is, because like I say, you know, your mind is telling you that it's gonna be full sort of, you know, multiple layers of hats and 2 jackets and then a big coat. You would assume that it's that sort of way, but that's one of the things that surprised me about seeing you all down there in the footage is it's like I feel cold just watching you. You know, where are the rest of your clothes? But
well, the first 2 days were like that. Was just a lot milder than I was expecting. But then roll on to the 16th, which was after they'd informed us that the forecast was that the weather was going to be turning bad and we were going to be leaving a day early. The wind did pick up that day. The clouds started to roll in, so the sun was getting obstructed at times, and the temperature did drop. So even around camp, I was there I had the balaclava and the ski goggles on and 3 layers of gloves and the big coat because the wind, it was like nail guns being fired at you. It was just biting,
I can imagine.
biting your skin.
So as far as the flat earthers that were down there with you, so Austin Whitsitt, Jeran is and the other 2 whose names I haven't bothered to memorize.
Lisbeth and Jonathan.
That's right, Lisbeth, that's right. Were they always flat earthers, or were there times where it was like you were just chatting to them like you may chat to somebody you meet in a bar when you're on holiday or something? Or are they always flat earthers and they've got that sort of barrier?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there was a lot of talk around that because that was really the one aspect, the one topic that truly linked us all.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of talk about it, but I mean, Jonathan and I mean, before going to Antarctica, we had 3 days in Punta Arenas, and then we had another 2 or 3 days there after Antarctica. And him and I, obviously, but he filmmaker and does photography as well. So do I. So we had that common ground between us. We were
Yeah.
sharing a hotel room both times in Punta Arenas and shared a tent in Antarctica. So we were talking, we talked barely about flat Earth and a lot about just photography, life
Yeah.
in general, and
Yeah.
yeah, him and I had a lot of good just general conversations, and very rarely did
Yeah.
the topic of flat Earth come up unless we were talking about. Um, I mean, he did talk at times about it, and he was on sort of sat with us with me and Toon when we were on his stream. He came on when I was streaming, sort of talking about it at times as well. But yeah, a lot of the conversations were just sort of more unrelated to flat
Yeah.
Earth and more about kind of photography and that.
Yeah, because it's interesting to me how consumed by flat Earth people like Austin Whitsitt are. Is it the be all and end all for them? Is it all they talk about, or can you squeeze a relatively normal conversation out of them? But I guess it's like anyone else. It depends if there's a common ground between you, it's gonna make it a lot easier to strike up a conversation, isn't it? So
Yeah, I mean, Lizbeth and I had a few conversations because she was struggling at times with a camera, so I was trying to help her with that at times. Um, I think it was after the midnight stream, and she started getting a lot of flack from people on the Clubhouse platform that she's on. A lot of them started giving her shit for basically accepting that there was a 24-hour sun. So
yeah,
she was kind of getting a bit upset about it. So I was chatting with her kind of about it, but not really about flat Earth per se, but more just sort of trying to reassure her that it's more a shock to their system, if you like. That I don't think she should take it a personal reaction. I think it was more just
yeah,
people not having need that kind of grief period, if you like, that they've just had this
yeah,
massive shock to their worldview kind of
yeah,
thing. So we had some conversations like that. Jeran and I had a lot of constructive conversations, mainly flat Earth related,
yeah,
but for the most part, Austin and I had only a few conversations. Pretty much all of them descended into debates about flat Earth.
yeah,
But I think for them to, at least, because they've got such a big audience, and it's kind of quite publicized, and that was their main reason for going down, was to go and see for their audience what actually happens. They seem to spend
yeah,
a lot of their time on like Discord and doing live streams trying to
right,
update their audience. So I think that was the
yeah.
driving force for them.
Yeah, yeah, because it's a shame in a sense that they've fallen victim themselves now in a certain way of looking at it, to me at least anyway, because you know I sort of always had this idea in my head that whichever flat Earth has agreed to go, number one, in my opinion, that puts them over and above every flat earther who declined the invitation, like Dave Weiss and Nathan Oakley. At least they were willing to go. And I think it was a very easy prediction to make that when they went, if they said yes, the sun was definitely in the sky for 24 hours. I saw it with my own eyes. They must have known that their audience was gonna either turn on them or start throwing accusations around like the ones we're hearing now, Jeran was never really a flat earther, he was a plant, and that kind of thing, because Jeran has, at least, well, as far as I've seen, he's been the only flat earther that attended that has said that it has made him rethink his position. Because isn't Austin just still doubling down?
Um, yeah. Well, as far as I know, Austin's still on the flat Earth train, although he doesn't seem to be. I mean, he's running Globebusters now, which would make you think he's still arguing that the Earth is flat, but he doesn't seem to be. Everything else, it seems to be less flat Earth and more just shifting to other conspiracies, like I don't know, bloody whatever else he's going on
Yeah.
about. But yeah, I think in regards to the flat, whichever flat earthers went down there, I think the likes of Dave Weiss and Oakley and Dubay rejecting it. There's only two reasons I think why they would reject it, and that is either because they know the result, what the result was going to be, so cowered away from going, or they were more scared of if they went and they accepted and they acknowledged that the 24-hour sun was there, that their audience would then turn on them.
Yeah.
So they were either knew that they were going to have to say there was a 24-hour sun, or they genuinely didn't know whether there was going to be a 24-hour sun. But if their audience turned on them, they would sort of lose their identity, if you like.
Yeah. 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 Because Jeranism is a word that is associated with flat Earth. So without flat Earth, is he still Jeranism, or or does he remove himself from that completely, and then sort of figure out for himself what he's going to do moving forward? Because his channel's quite large, isn't it? Isn't it around 250,000 subscribers currently?
160.
Oh, is it?
364,000, I think.
All right, I thought he had over 200,000.
No,
so anyway, the point I was trying to make is that it's very difficult, which is why I say that Jeranism and even Witsit were, they showed a certain amount of courage by agreeing to go, because, like you say, they knew what the result was going to be, because it's the same every year, so it's predictable, and they knew that they were potentially risking their income, because they're both full-time content creators, aren't they?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, Jeran. I think probably I'd give more respect to Jeran, because he went knowing a 24-hour sun doesn't work on flat Earth, and he stuck to his guns. There's a 24-hour sun. Well, the Earth can't be flat, and not only that, he's completely pivoted now. That he's now out capturing Falcon rocket launches and sort of showing, actually sticking to his guns and going, no,
Yeah.
look, the Earth can't be flat. It's got to be a globe.
Yeah.
So he's gone very much like STST and Raichi did in that regards. That he's been true to himself. Whereas Austin kind of got the impression, like, I don't know, that he was maybe agreed to go only because he didn't want to be seen as a coward backing out.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think Dave Weiss and Eric Dubay realize that that's how they are now perceived? Or do you think they just don't care because they're so invested in flat Earth that, say what you like, because I'm getting paid?
I don't really know. I don't really know too much about Dubay, but I mean, I think Weiss knows full well. You can see how much he's scrambling to try and keep his app security, or lack of, kind of hide that from everybody. I think he knows full well. Yeah, he knows he's been found out. He's just trying to kind of keep it going as long as he can.
Yeah, yeah. So going back to TFE, so Jeran has kind of accepted then that the fact that you did all witness the same 24-hour sun, says to him that the Earth can't possibly be flat. So apart from the obvious, which is the 24-hour sun, what other things did you see any other things that sort of expanded your own knowledge of the things we talk about when it comes to arguing the shape of the Earth? Was there any other little things that you got from the trip?
Oh, I mean, we were surrounded by various other proofs that that the Earth can't be flat. Not just, obviously not just the 24-hour sun, but I mean the fact that the first thing we did when we got at halfway point was set up Starlink by putting the antenna on the roof pointing straight up, and we were then live streaming from Antarctica. Doesn't work on a flat Earth. We measured the distance between lines of longitude at Santiago, Punta Arenas, and Union Glacier. And where I live in the UK is a fairly similar latitude to Punta Arenas. So I actually brought back the GPS monitor that we were using in Chile back here and bought a trundle wheel. So I've repeated the same test here in the UK.
Yeah.
So that you could see that the gap between lines of longitude doesn't get bigger and bigger the further south you go. They get bigger and bigger until you reach the equator, and then they get smaller and smaller.
Yeah, then they start getting smaller again. Yeah.
Mm.
So you know, do you think so? It was called The Final Experiment. Do you think it achieved anything definitive? Because, you know, we all know that flat earthers are never going to stop flat earthing, regardless of what you show them. You could literally, if you had magical powers, to levitate one of them up into the air far enough that they could see that the earth is a globe, they'd probably still find a way of screaming fake, wouldn't they? So do you think there was anything achieved by the final experiment apart from giving you all an incredible once-in-a-lifetime experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was. I think it did achieve. Definitely did achieve. It did. It didn't achieve the. The ideal goal would be we go, we see the 24-hour sun, we show everybody the 24-hour sun, and then all the flat earthers go, "Oh, I was wrong. No more flat Earth." That was never going to happen.
No.
But the fact that it's shifted one of the biggest well-known flat earthers to completely flip his position on the world, huge. I know flat earthers will say, "Oh, he's a shill, he was paid." That's a hell of a commitment to pretend to be a flat earther for 8 years of your life and go through the ridicules he's been going through for that's quite impressive. But there's more than Jeran who've seen the light, shall we say. I think the biggest thing isn't even what we did in Antarctica. It's the reaction from the rest of the flat Earth community that is speaking volumes to people.
It's very telling, isn't it?
Anyone who's not invested in flat Earth, not content creators, obviously that kind of becomes their livelihood, it becomes their identity, but to just Joe Blogs on the street who is just looking at this and thinking, could it be flat, could it not? They're now seeing how these flat earthers are behaving and running away from free trips to Antarctica after years of saying, I want to go. Now scrambling for it must be fake because it must be fake, but we can't actually show how or why.
Yeah.
It speaks volumes to those people. And really, I think in terms of a name or a branding, the final experiment, the 24-hour suns, like I said, not the final experiment, but we did a hell of a lot more on that trip than just seeing the 24-hour sun. There was, like I said, the fact that Starlink worked in Antarctica, the fact that we measured the lines of longitude, the fact that we witnessed the sun setting and rising further south of us while we were in Chile, capturing the South Celestial Pole, so on and so forth. I mean, the Equatorial mount that I used doesn't work on a flat Earth. There was all these different things that we did on that trip. So I did actually say to Will that, because he said he wanted to put together a collection of everything we did. And I said, you should call it the final experiments, plural.
Yeah.
Because those collectively, if you take all of those together, anyone who's intellectually honest with themselves will look at everything that we did in its entirety and go, the Earth cannot be flat.
Yeah.
So I think collectively they are the tool going forward that anyone who's considering the Earth might be flat, take a look at all of that evidence and then see how, if you can reconcile how all of that works with the Earth being flat, then the
Yeah.
Earth might be flat. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
not. And I think they're
Yeah.
collectively those are the final experiments.
Yeah. But as far as I can see, and this is in reference to your video from today about you think, because I've made a video about him as well. How do you could you sort of pick out the most ridiculous reason that it was fake that you've heard so far? You know, things like the 360-degree LED screens, and you know, it was green screened originally, then it was those. It's just, it all sounds really school playground.
Yeah, I mean, it really feels like the excuses kind of feel like a barn full of headless chickens while it's on fire, just running
Yeah.
around like crazy, literally grasping at anything they can find without even considering the likelihood or the possibility of it. You can kind of see them as they go, kind of hear a possible reason and then go looking for what might fit with
Yeah.
that, even though when they don't realize half the time their own claims contradict each other.
Yeah. Yeah. It's bonkers. So, and I don't mean this now in relation necessarily to the final experiment. It's more about where it took place. So, did it have an effect on you as a person? Do you think it's changed your perspective on anything, either about the argument that the Earth is or isn't flat? Has it taught you anything about the power of belief from the flat earthers? Because realistically, that's the reason that the flat earthers, they believe that the Earth is flat, but what they can't do is prove it, and it's because it's not, as we both well know. But is there anything you think will stick with you for life now that you sort of experienced when you were down there, even if it was just being there?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that it's a once in a lifetime kind of trip. But I say once
Yeah.
in a lifetime. I would absolutely love to do it again, but I highly doubt that I ever will have the opportunity to. So yeah, I think it's for anybody who gets the chance to go there and experience it, it is something that sticks with them. It's not the kind of place that most people get to just go to on a yearly basis. It's not like just it's not like heading off to Corfu for a week that you can just do over and over and over again, and after a while it all starts to just merge into one. That's the kind of trip that sticks with you forever.
Yeah.
Such a
Yeah.
crazy place. In terms of whether it's changed me, I don't really think so.
No. Because you know what I mean?
No,
Some people will visit a location and it has such an impact on them. They sort of, it can give them a different outlook on life in some cases, or, there was nothing that sort of drastic that you are going to kind of carry with you until, apart from the fact that you've been there then. So that would be the thing, yeah?
well, I have a greater appreciation of sleep now.
Yeah, I'm sure. And
But
your gas fire, probably.
yeah, I mean, just even like getting to meet like Toon and Critical Think, and like Toon and I, we spent quite a lot of time together on streams. Just and it's weird the fact that like the people that I've spoken to online but never met in person, and yet
Yeah.
arrived and we got together and it was like we'd just known each other for years, just straight
Yeah.
into just talking to each other like friends. We were throwing banter back and forth on live streams. It was really fun to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so even just like getting the opportunity to meet them as well.
Yeah.
And Jeran to some extent as well. I think Jeran and I got on really well, and we were able to have these really constructive conversations where we actually weren't interrupting each other. We were listening to each other. We were taking each other's points on board and trying to build on that. And I think he and I could have some more conversations in the future about
Yeah.
other topics. Like I'd love to be able
Yeah.
to get on a stream with him and start talking about the moon landings, because that's still a sticking point for him.
Yeah. 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 Somebody else had said that he's not sort of doing the flat earth thing necessarily, but he's most certainly no longer, he's still a conspiracy theorist. Talking about conspiracy theorists, let's say by some miracle there's a flat earther in the side chat now, or somebody who's kind of on the fence and they think the earth might be flat, apart from the 24-hour sun, because that's, a bit too obvious. What one thing would you tell them to consider before they choose definitively whether or not they believe the earth is flat or accept what the reality is?
I think there are so many points that maybe you don't necessarily, there's so much in day-to-day life that you don't consider how it works on the earth until you actually experience it. I mean, for example, on the flight to Chile, I was out over the middle of the Atlantic getting Wi-Fi from the plane, and the Wi-Fi antenna is on the roof of the plane. We're 40,000 feet over the Atlantic and thousands of miles from the nearest cell tower, and yet I'm able to get internet on the plane from an antenna that's above the plane. So, but most people don't appreciate that these days. They wouldn't stop to think, how is it working? How am I getting this? I think if the one for me at the moment, the one definitive point I think that proves it best is the video that I did recently about the equatorial mount used at the equator on the equinox. Now, the fact that in the middle of the night, it tracks the sun perfectly through the day, and then in the middle of the night, it's pointing down at the ground. Right, that thing works. You don't have to use it at the equator or on the equinox. You can set it up anywhere on any day, and when the sun sets, the camera's pointing towards the ground. I think just the equator and the equinox makes it more apparent, the fact that at midnight, the camera is literally pointing straight down at the ground because the sun is on the opposite side of the earth. I put that challenge out and said, can any flat earther explain how this works? And I've had nothing other than Nathan Oakley's minions saying, oh, Earth's measured flat, so...
Yeah, exactly. I think Nathan Oakley, he's become sort of a parody of himself. He's so ridiculous that I don't think even other flat earthers take him seriously anymore.
No, I think he's holding out to... I think he was hoping that he'd kind of be left after all of this final experiment. I think he was hoping that the rest of the flat earth community would implode and he could kind of be there as the savior for them all. It kind of hasn't worked. I mean, his stream today, I listened in, and all he seemed to be doing was just yelling at people that you can't say the word elevation angles because that requires a flat earth. It's like, you haven't got a clue how elevation angles work, but he seems
the problem I've always sorry, Dave. The problem I've always found with Nathan Oakley is that to somebody who is kind of teetering on the edge of is the earth flat or isn't it, because he's pretty eloquent, isn't he? So he can sound relatively smart. He knows certain big words and where he needs to throw them in. But if you actually listen, a lot of what he's saying is just like the scene from bloody Bruce Almighty, where he's making heaven back. So that's what he's actually saying, but with certain buzzwords that make him sound flat earther smart.
Yeah, he can say the big words, and he can say the things that he can put these points across in a way that makes it sound like he knows what he's talking about, but you can kind of tell that he doesn't actually understand what it is he's talking about. Like he did it today. He was talking about elevation angles, and he was trying to explain what an elevation angle is, because somebody asked him what's an elevation angle, and he said it's the angle between the line of sight to a star or an object, and then from there to the horizontal plane of Earth. It's like, it's not, because if it was a measurement to the horizontal plane of Earth, you wouldn't need to use dip corrections for celestial navigation. It's like he just takes out these little bits that are the evidence of the globe. So we'll say like a chunk of it that's correct, and then throw in one little bit that's not correct but
Yeah.
points to, oh, well, hey, that proves the Earth's flat. I had it with one of his
Yeah.
minions jumped in on my. You always know when Oakley does a video about you because you get his minions coming into your chat
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
Nathan
I
Oakley
noticed
sent
that
me
as
here.
well. Yeah.
And it was about the EQ mount. And all Nathan Oakley could say is because when you first set up an EQ mount, it's advised that you level the mount. And he says, well, level means the Earth's flat. So everything else you can ignore. What he didn't understand, because he's never used an EQ mount, and what I tried pointing out to the guy who came into my chat is you don't need to level the mount. It makes it easier to set it up, but you don't need to level it. You can set it up without it being level, which completely nullifies Oakley's argument.
Yeah.
The guy couldn't wrap his head around that. He's like, no, you have to level it. I'm like, it says in the instruction manual, you don't have to. So get on with that. And he just couldn't reconcile with it. He's like, no, Oakley's told me it needs to be level, so Earth must be flat.
And that's the problem, isn't it? So many of these sort of flat Earth viewers, they literally hang on the every word that Nathan Oakley says, or Eric Dubay, or David Weiss. You know, they're like hungry little puppies lapping it up. You know, it's crazy. It is. So, just to let the side chat know, and if it's okay with Dave, because I'm not sure if this was in the notes, but if we can do maybe a quick 10 minutes of questions from the side chat for Dave, and we'll call it a day then, because I know everybody's time is valuable. So while we give the side chat a couple of minutes to pose their questions, and I'll give you one to think about, and I'm going to address some super chats. After the file experiment, what would you say? What's your opinion on how we should be handling the flat Earth topic now? Should we be amending our approach, or? And I know we all do it slightly different. Like obviously, my videos are nothing like your videos, and Dan's videos are nothing like mine. Or do you know what I mean? So do you think we should be kind of approaching this in a different way now because they're dealing with this huge thing about, you know, an undeniable proof that they just can't escape from? So
I think it's tricky. I mean, everyone obviously handles videos differently. So, and I think the issue is that all flat earthers are different. Some flat earthers are just doing it for attention. They're trolls. They want the attention and are quite happy to just have the piss taken out of them.
Yeah.
Others are people who are genuinely trying to wrap their heads around things, and if sort of asking questions and not understanding how things work is then met with sort of digs and accusations of being stupid, it might push them further away. So I think people react differently to different people.
Yeah.
I think probably priority one is it's knowing who it is that you're talking to. Like, for example, not Dave Weiss.
Yeah, definitely not Dave Weiss. I'm definitely never going to live that down. Right. £10 super chat from Present99. Question: the guy who is now making the documentary, is he still a flurf? And was there a lot of face palming, as we say in Germany, meaning talking to each other, details about cameras and video stuff? No, that didn't say. Jesus, Mike, I need to put it back on full screen. I couldn't read that. He didn't say. He said a German word, and it looked like face palming through these glasses. Sorry, Dave.
Fashsimplin? I
don't know.
Yeah, so Jonathan is he's making the documentary. I don't know on his position. I've not really spoken to him. Like I said, I didn't really speak to him too much anyway. I think the 24-hour sun if he is still a flat earther, the 24-hour sun put a massive dent in it for him, because I think even he said he couldn't explain how a 24-hour sun would work on a flat earth. But I've not heard him say one way or another whether he is or isn't. and yeah, like I said, most of the chat was more just about sort of cameras, photography. I was shooting a lot of footage, helping him shoot a lot of footage as well. There was times where I was getting. There were certain things like, for example, the trucks were carrying people back to the plane on the last day, and I was kind of said to him, I said, "Oh, this might make a good shot." And he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah." So I was suggesting things that I'd seen. He wanted to then go and shoot, and I was taking my cameras with me so that we were setting up multiple cameras to all film it from multiple different angles, because it was a one chance to get it, and then I was giving him all the footage as well. So yeah, most of it was actually sort of conversations about footage that we could capture for the documentary rather than the topic of the documentary.
Right. £5 super chat from Robert Charlton. When he first started, do you think Jeran thought if he waited long enough, someone would offer him a free trip at some point? Or if he wanted long enough, one of the two?
I don't know, to be honest. I mean, it's a kind of a surreal trip, to be honest, and I think if anything, probably space would have been more the point, because Antarctica wasn't something that Jeran really seemed to bring up all that often. He never really made any talk. Like Dubai, there's a video of Dubai somewhere actively saying, "I want to go to Antarctica. When are people going to let me go to Antarctica?"
Yeah,
so
I've got that footage.
Yeah, I think he would have been more likely to be one looking for the trip, but in the end didn't want to take it. So no, I don't think Jeran sort of went into it hoping that he would get a trip like that. Space might be a different matter, but not Antarctica.
Yeah. £50 super chat from Tube Spanner. Thank you both and everyone involved. This whole event has been and continues to be a masterclass in YouTube engagement that a lot of creators should take note of. Thank you very much indeed, and I promise not to tell anybody that we're friends. So, thank you, Danielle. The turtle moves, the earth is flat and it's bloody heavy. Icy Spin 199. Jeran has probably faced more ridicule than anyone. I would agree with that. He's really been put through the ringer. £20 super chat, $20, sorry, from Mr. 2915. Hey guys, just want to say watching this is the highlight of my year. I'm deployed to the ME right now, and I work with high altitude radar systems that would blow a flat earther's theories out of the water. That's to quote Jeran, that's very interesting. £5 of Aaron McKee. Yeah, interesting. Whitsett is in big time denial. TFE was the first nail. Space tourism will be the second nail, unless Creaky finally gets his bloody balloon aloft. It's happening. I honestly just thought I'd go to Tesco's, buy a helium balloon and float my camera up. It's so bloody complicated. You've got to get permission to launch and all sorts of nonsense. Some people like a certain Creaky have claimed Dave McKeegan is a flair for any chance to do any defense to that rumor. I think I've been punished enough for that. -6 is sweater weather. Well, I had more than a sweater on. Thank you, Mike Hatch. Get Dave's advice on camera to put on your balloon. I think I've asked you, Dave, haven't I? Or did I just think I did?
You did. You messaged me, although I did suggest maybe ask Mr. Sensible because he'd already done it. However, I can recommend Insta360s are freaking amazing. So I don't know if one of them would work. In fact, people have launched 360s into space before as well, or on weather balloons.
Because I woke up to a WhatsApp message off Will Duffy this morning, and he's going to start asking flat earthers which lenses they will accept as being genuine, so that when the balloon does go up, and basically we're waiting for the right weather. It's my fault. I shouldn't have announced it so far ahead of time, but as usual, I got overexcited. Conspiracy Music Studios, long-time watchers, so here's a bit of support. You and McKeegan are both awesome. Thank you, pal. Another one from Aaron McPhee. Second best Bob said he meant to say live, not love. I hate rushing through the super chats like this, but the conversation's more important. Yeah, I read that one out earlier on. Right, so, Callum, have there been any questions come in for Dave from the side chat? Right, Oh, okay, in the private chat, is it?
No, start, go to the bottom.
Right.
There's
Oh, hang on. Start, go to the bottom. So from J Bird Max down, yeah? Right. So, Dave, do you think normal people are too toxic towards flirts when making logical arguments?
It's tricky because it depends.
Use me as an example if you want to, Dave. Am I too mean? Am I toxic in my approach to flat earthers? And be honest.
It's hard to judge because I think if you're dealing with someone you've not... The problem is you can't really tarnish, or at least I don't want to tarnish all flat earthers with the same brush of just going, you're a flat earther, therefore you're an idiot, which I think is a perception that a lot of people take. Like it's a strange conversation when you say to somebody, well, somebody says, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a YouTube content creator. What do you do?
Yeah.
I argue with people about the shape of the earth, or, when I said I was going to Antarctica, why are you going there? I'm going to prove to people the earth's not flat. They immediately just think, oh, flat earthers are fucking idiots. I think it's harsh to tar everyone with the same brush. It is one of those that, and I've said this before, most people in day-to-day lives don't really need to consider the shape of the earth. Most people just take it as granted of, we've been told the earth's flat, and we've been told the earth's a globe, and I've no reason to think otherwise until you start seeing videos like Dubai's shite, and then they start thinking, oh, actually, I've not really thought about it. Maybe it might be. I think mocking those people is harsh, and I don't like doing that because there are some people who can just fall into that trap because they've not really considered the argument openly on both sides. And sometimes it just takes a little light bulb moment of, how do you explain this or how do you explain that, for people to think, well, actually, no, yeah, you're right, that doesn't make sense. Earth's a globe. Whereas you have other people who have just been down that rabbit hole for so long, and they're just buried with their heads so far up their own arses that they're not listening to anything anyway. And you wind up just making the same arguments over and over and over again to them. Like, there's accounts that wind up in my comment section now that I see over and over again, and I've given up having constructive conversations with them because they're not interested in having constructive conversations. They just want to try and call me a shill and claim that they've debunked me, even though they've not. And that's where I just pull out the sarcasm, because they're not interested in seeking the truth. So why should I bother wasting my time on helping them?
Exactly. Another one from Matt Koch. Would you consider doing a joint trip, one to the Arctic and one to the Antarctic again in the same year, to show both full night and full day in the same trip? What, me personally, or just Dave? Or...
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, I'm not going, it's freezing.
What, Dave?
I mean, I'd love to go back to Antarctica. I'd happily go if someone's paying for me again and I get to go to the one with daylight.
That's
actually,
the thing,
no,
isn't it?
Tell a lie. Actually, no. 24-hour darkness, I might like to experience some astrophotography, but yeah,
that would be very cool.
Yeah, I don't think such a trip would gain much benefit more than there wouldn't be much more gained from it than what we got from seeing the 24-hour sun anyway. Certainly not enough to justify paying for 2 trips, essentially.
What's next after TFE? How about a group high altitude plane ride to see the curve? Now, funny, I let Dave give an answer now, but when I was trying to decide what I could do by way of an experiment, I made inquiries about doing a high altitude flight. Excuse me. And the only company I could find that did it is in Russia, and they are not out of, they've literally shut down because of the, what's going on in the world, so you can't actually book them. But it was about £15,000 for a 3-hour flight, and I just think it would be so cool. Even though I'm afraid of flying, I think once you get beyond a certain height, it's like, well, I'm screwed either way now. I'm up here now, and so I may as well enjoy it. So, would you do a high altitude plane ride, Dave, to see the curve?
I mean, I'd love to go up. You know, I'd love to go up in like a U2 or something to just to experience that view. But I think in terms of a group one might be very difficult because there's. I think the only plane that I could think of that could get that high and carry a group of people will be Concorde, which obviously doesn't fly anymore. The other one that I thought that I suggested to Will could make a good TFE sequel would be chartering a flight from Punta Arenas over the South Pole and then landing in, I think it's Perth, is the Great Circle route between Punta Arenas and Perth.
The route that flat earthers say is impossible.
Yeah, because that's the one that Dave Weiss has now shifted to saying, no, we never said 24-hour sun, can't prove it, but what you can't do is fly
the 24-hour sun in Antarctica doesn't work on a flat earth.
Do you think debunking is pointless now? Do you think debating is pointless now? Just debunk. Now, I wouldn't say I think debating is pointless because I enjoy watching some flat earth debates myself. But I've always thought that debates are pointless because playing chess with a pigeon, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're entertaining to an extent. It depends on the person you're dealing with. I mean, some of them are just giving me a freaking headache listening to it. Like, what was it? Toon and somebody the other night was debating Vince and Ross, and you just got the impression that they're just going through the motions of they've got nothing. I say debate. There's never a debate. It always goes one of two ways. It's either somebody genuinely is open to the idea that they might be wrong and the Earth might be a globe, in which case it never goes into a full debate. It goes into more them asking questions.
Yeah.
Or it's somebody who just parrots the same debate-based bollocks, and they've never got a counter argument for when you then point out how and why they're wrong, and they just go, okay, well, I don't want to admit that I'm wrong, so I'm just going to change topic and talk about something else.
Yeah. What it always reminds me of, and I've said this in tons of my videos, it's kind of take yourself back, Dave, to when you were 7 or 8 years old and you were arguing on the playground with a guy and you could see you winning the argument, and then, or he could see he's not going to win, and then he just goes, yeah, but you smell and your dad's gay, and then he runs off. It's that sort of childlike method of arguing, and I know I've got a very childish sense of humor. There's nothing funnier than a fart joke, and nobody will ever debunk that, I promise you. But it's all so childish.
Yeah, like I said, I think there are an element of some of them who I think they just do it more for the attention than anything else, and they're just, like I said, the Alex Stein FTFE debate, I only skimmed through it the other day, and I jumped to the closing bit, and it said something about they did a poll, if you like, for who do you think won the debate, and basically Stein just got wiped out in the poll. And then he just started turning to mocking the crowd and saying that they're all idiots and they've only got like 3 brain cells. I'm like, you just, I think he was doing it more for satire than anything else.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Last super chat, I think I heard Whitsitt say in the debate he would admit the Earth is round if he saw the 24-hour sun. Also, it doesn't feel cold at the poles due to the humidity. Well, that was more of a statement than a question, but if he did say that, then he is most definitely not a man of his word, because he did witness the 24-hour sun along with Mr. McKeegan, that guy over there. Dave, thank you very much indeed for joining me. I'm sorry it was a bit of a shambles at the beginning, but it wouldn't be one of my live streams if there weren't a fixed number of technical issues while I was live.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I'm happy that they did all go to pot and everything did go wrong, because I'm doing a live stream tomorrow on my channel, and I was kind of worried of what if it all goes bad, but at least now I know, it's fine.
Yeah, because you
less shit goes wrong than Creaky's, I'm fine.
Yeah, I was good. You're probably sat there and I'm thinking, well, if Creaky can do it, I definitely can. Why was I worried in the first place? But that's the thing, I can't do it on my own. That's why Callum lives up in the corner of my screen, so that because they can only see you on solo layout, Carl. See, he has to be there for moral support and to press buttons. I can't even chew chewing gum and walk at the same time. So hang about a second, Dave. Let me just get rid of this lovely lot. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm sorry that we had the issues at the beginning. I really sincerely hope I haven't missed any of the super chats, obviously, because I was having a conversation with Dave. I didn't want to be diving in and out of the side chat too much, so I didn't even have it open. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you again. Well, I'll see you tomorrow, provided I get a video recorded, but we'll see you again next Tuesday. And don't forget, there'll be highlights from this episode on the Creaky Extra channel, as long as Callum's willing to stay up late tonight and edit the video. So thanks for watching, everybody. Love you. Bye.
I don't think so. No, 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 no. I don't think so. No, 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 no. It's never, ever, 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 ever gonna happen. I don't think so. No, 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 no. I don't think so. No, 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 no. It's never, ever, 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 ever gonna happen. I don't think so. No, 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 no.